Hello, welcome back to the Talk of Fame podcast with your host, Kylie Montini, and I'm very excited for today's episode because we're joined by the host of Be the Change podcast, in which I was honored to be a guest on the show, Lily Mott. Thanks so much for coming on, Lily. I'm super happy to chat with you again.
Of course, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you on. So you are the host of the Be the Change podcast, which is about young people and organizations making a difference around the country and the world. Like, what type of people do you kind of feature or showcase on the show?
Yeah, so I really started, it's kind of evolved a lot at this point in, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But at this point in kind of the podcast scope, I really look for Gen Z in particular. I look for students who, mostly students who are kind of going through this change making process and trying to develop these different initiatives. Often it's activists, advocates, change makers. Change makers is kind of a good broad umbrella to encompass all of these different people. And often I just kind of look for people that are making a difference in their communities, countries, even around the world. And I really try to be kind of diverse in the scope of that. So people who are working on a bunch of different issues and who are passionate about different things, because I think it's just as much of a learning opportunity as it is an opportunity to kind of raise awareness about their work. So yeah, I kind of anyone and everyone. There's a wide scope of guests. But yeah, it's really developed to be really exciting platform with lots of different guests. And I think I'm close to 150 episodes at this point. So kind of crazy.
That's crazy. Like, when did you start this whole thing? Like, did you start this during the pandemic or did you start before?
Yes, so I started during the pandemic and it was a very kind of organic process to start it. I was in Washington, D.C. I was an intern there. And of course, it was COVID summer, that it was June 2020. And I was in DC doing and kind of it was mostly just virtual. And I was still there though. And that's when the protests following the murder of George Floyd broke out. And there was all of these different movements on the streets. And in the first couple of days, I decided to just go to Lafayette Square Park. And it was actually the day that protesters were cleared out from what would become Black Lives Matter Plaza. And so I just started to record, and my phone was only on 7%. So it ended up dying. And of course, my parents are not very happy about this. It was more of a do it and then ask for forgiveness after. So
Mm.
my phone died, and I ended up protesting all night. And I think I ended up like back in my apartment at 2 a.m. And then I just kind of felt so many emotions from seeing that scene and being tear gassed and shot by rubber bullets. And that was the first time that I'd ever had an experience like that. And so I just kind of started jotting down my thoughts. And I knew that this was this moment where a lot of people weren't able to be at those protests and be on the streets in that way, of course, because of the pandemic and because of where they lived around the country. And so they were seeing it on the news. And so I wanted to give kind of a perspective from my own, I guess at the time, 19-year-old, just me, and share it with kind of my friends and family and tell them what I was seeing. And so it started off as my own experience, and then it kind of developed into featuring nonprofits and different organizations, and then individuals who are leading this movement. So it kind of definitely grew organically, and it started more locally, moved on to more national, and then international. And so it's definitely just been a very kind of, like I said, organic growth process, and just seeing where it goes. But yeah, I think it was that spur of the moment kind of COVID summer, and let's see what happens. Let's be involved in this. And now I guess 2.5 years. No, yeah, here we are.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, do you think if the protest in 2020 didn't happen, like you wouldn't have like your podcast and everything? Because for me, like if the pandemic wouldn't happen, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for that wasted time and doing nothing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think podcasting too, and I wonder if you feel the same, but I think podcasting as an industry really, really boomed over the pandemic because everyone
Hmm.
was doing kind of their, podcast walks, and they had so much time to, time around the house to listen, and they wanted to still educate themselves in some way. And, just having this kind of constantly going in your AirPods, having a podcast playing is a great way to do that. I think I've always been really passionate about journalism. So I think
Hmm.
in some form, something like this would have developed. I'm not sure if it would have been in the same way, just because I did have that kind of catalyzing event. So I think maybe it would look a little bit different, or it would have been delayed or something. But I think I would have found my way to this type of project. I'm not sure in what form it would be without the protests and things, but yeah, I think I still would have. My hero was Christiane Amanpour, and I love her different interviews and everything. I love the format of her show. So I think I've kind of adapted that to be what I could do, and interviewing these young change makers is kind of my way of doing that. But I think I would have eventually found my way to something like this, but the protest was a great way to kind of kickstart it. And I think the pandemic, like you said, I also had so much time to kind of develop it. So that definitely helped.
Like, were you into podcasts before? Like you started your own? 'Cause, like for me, like I was only listening to like maybe two podcasts before I even started this. I wasn't like a big podcast person until after I started this.
That's funny. Yeah, I think I started to actually only get into them. I actually haven't like thought about that. I only started to get into them probably a couple months before the pandemic started. So I guess a little bit prior to the pandemic. But admittedly, I was very much kind of a crime junkie, like the
Mm-hmm.
crime podcast type. I would always listen to them when I was working out because it was easier to kind of run with just the podcast going. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted a distraction that wasn't music. So I think, yeah, I started to kind of dip my toe into just the podcasting world a little bit before the pandemic. And I was like, I think this is something, that is a really cool. It has a lot of news potential, but I hadn't really
Mm-hmm.
like dove into it in the same way. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, like what is like your some like all your favorite podcasts that you like to listen to? I know this is a hard question. I know it's hard for me too. Like I listen to so many, but it's hard to pick just like one.
Yeah. I think I've been bouncing around a bunch. Like I am kind of a podcast binger. I will just go
Mm-hmm.
through like a whole podcast and I just get obsessed with them. So I think right now the one that I'm listening to, and I think everyone should check it out because I think it speaks to it's a great like journalistic podcast, but it's called Killed and it's by Audio Chuck. And it's all of these different stories. They're into their second season now. And it's all of these different stories that have been killed by and I guess just if no if people don't know that term, if they were shut down by editors, or like the publishing company because they're too controversial. And so this developer, she's gone or the person who's hosting the podcast, the producer, and she's also the host, has gone in and kind of resurfaced these stories and been able to talk to the journalists and talk to the people behind the story. And so to kind of like bring light to them again, and she's breaking these stories again, and there are all of these interesting just kind of deep controversies, and it's really cool. So I would definitely recommend that one. But then you kind of got your classics. I always do the up first, and again, I'm still a crime podcast junkie, so I'll admit that. But I love a good crime junkie episode here and there. So yeah, a
Yeah.
wide variety. But I'm always down for more recommendations from anyone. So
Yeah, I'm a
I'd
big
love
like
to hear.
crime person. Like whether it's like a show or like a podcast, I'm like, or even TikToks about it, I'm like into it for some reason.
Yeah.
I love like crime things, whether it's like a big crime case going on right now or something, or an old one, I'm always like into it. Like it's just
Yeah.
like I would be basically obsessed with it for the day.
Yes, I can definitely relate to that. The Murdoch murders and stuff.
Oh
It's
yeah.
yeah, all over the place.
Yeah, I've been obsessed with the Murdoch cases and like there was a case last year about that's Gabby Petito. I was obsessed with that
Mhm.
case as well last year. I was obsessed with that one. Now I'm into like a Brian case now with
Yeah,
Idaho murders.
for sure, for sure.
But like, what is like your mission for the podcast? Like, what do you want like people to kind of take away or from the podcast with your guests, or even like stories from like your life?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really become this kind of the goal of it is kind of this like butterfly effect, I think, of change making in the sense that I really wanted to use this as like a community of change makers. So I guess if there's someone who listens to one of these episodes and thinks that's super cool, I'd really like to work on that issue, or I'd really like to work with that organization, or I'd like to even just reach out to that guest. I think then that podcast has kind of served its purpose. I think just raising awareness about the work that young people are doing and hopefully inspiring other people to also do something like that or to also get involved in a way. I think that's really the goal. And just the more people that can kind of listen, and like I said, if they find anything, even a little thing that they think is interesting, and they give it a quick Google, I think it's kind of served its purpose in educating people and also just inspiring other people to get involved. That really is the mission. So I
Mhm.
always tell people too, I'm always just trying to share stories. That's what I want. I want to connect with the guests, and I just want to amplify their voices. So I hope that I've been able to do that, and I feel like creating this community of change makers really around the world at this point, that's the whole goal. So I've also developed a Geneva community for the guests and the listeners and things, and just to really kind of continue to build that network for the podcast. So that's definitely the motivation, just kind of this butterfly effect of change making.
Like you are definitely like making change with your podcast. It's definitely like with all the guests and your experience. Like your first episode was about the George Floyd, like all these things protests, right?
Yes, yes. So that was definitely, it's interesting because that was, like I mentioned, that was kind of my own experience in like, and it wasn't even, I guess, necessarily change making. It was just kind of sharing what I had seen and the sights and smells and everything that had gone on. And then from there, I was able to, since I was still in DC, I featured a lot of DC activists. And then when I moved, when I bounced around, I'm from Colorado originally, so from Colorado to I lived in the Outer Banks for a summer to back to school at Washington Lee University, where I go in Virginia. And so then it became more national just because I was bouncing around the US. And then I went to study abroad for a year. And then it became more international because I actually got to meet a bunch of people. I was at Oxford. And so I got to meet some Rhodes Scholars and some people who are doing amazing work over there. And so it's kind of cool because as I've developed as kind of a student and as a journalist, the podcast has kind of grown with me. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
I like to say. It's kind of a cool reflection of my travels and my experiences so far.
Like you're exactly right. Because even though like you're doing a podcast, even like with being in college or high school, like you are making connections. Like you always like find person like that like everywhere you go. Like I just
Yeah.
feel like every place you go, whether it's like out of country or staying abroad or going to California or somewhere, you always know someone in that place. And
Yeah,
that's like
yeah.
the best part about doing a podcast is that like you know everyone in the industry. Where
Exactly. Exactly. Or if you have questions, or that's what's been cool for me is, if you have something like I recently got connected with someone who's working in ChatGPT, and now it's like, oh, that's so cool. Like I never would have, known about that. And I get to kind of learn about this through her, which is just, it's so cool.
That's the best part about like doing podcasts or even like doing journalism is that like you learn many things I didn't know about 2 years ago. Like it's just like each episode you're learning something new. Like you just learn something you may know or may not know. Like you're learning many topics. Maybe it's like climate change, women empowerment, or whatever it is that they're passionate about. Like you're learning so many new details I never knew like 2 days ago before the interview.
I totally agree. Yes, absolutely.
And like, did you want to kind of like pursue journalism after you graduate from university, or it's kind of like, oh, I'm just going to keep this in college, like that type of thing?
Yeah, so that's actually that's my plan. I love journalism. I think it's definitely going to be my career path into the future. So I will actually be I'm going back to study abroad again next year to get my master's, and I'd really like to work in international journalism. So I'm hoping to be based in England or in Wales, in the UK somewhere
Mm.
probably, and or just Europe maybe. I'm keeping the options open, but I would love to be kind of a US UK correspondent at some point in my future because I love the idea that journalism can be a bridge between different cultures and different populations. And so I'd really, really like to do that. I loved living in the UK when I was there. So I want to go back and hopefully kind of establish a journalistic career over there. But yeah, that's definitely what I want to do into the future. Just I've kind of found this passion for amplifying voices and sharing stories, and it's kind of like a bug, once
Mm.
I'm hooked, I just want to do
Yeah.
more. So that's the goal.
Yeah, I'm actually so jealous. Like you lived in the UK or Europe is like basically my number one place to go to UK. Like it's always been on my list. Like me and my mom literally always talked about going to England for a couple of days before Queen Elizabeth died, and then she died and we couldn't make it. So I'm like, oh, because
Oh
I
my
love
gosh.
the royal
Well,
family. So I'm like, I'm obsessed with the royal family. Like, it's
yeah.
anything royal family related, I'm basically into it. So like, I was like,
Yeah.
I would die to go to UK before Queen Elizabeth dies. So
Oh my
she's like
gosh. Yeah.
older and stuff. Then a couple months later, like early this year, she passed away. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, and
What?
this will be an exciting time too, depending on when, this is published, everything with the coronation and
Mm.
everything. So, I mean, I'll be there next year. So if you get the chance next year, you got to come visit. I'll be in Wales though, so you might have to make a little trip to London to go
Yeah,
see
for sure. I'll
Buckingham
definitely
Palace
let
and
you know if
everything.
I
But
visit next year. It's definitely on my list.
absolutely, absolutely.
But like, are you like, do you know when the coronation is for Prince Charles or King
It's
Charles or whatever you call it? I know it's this month, like this
yeah, I think
month.
it's May 28th. I think it's
Oh.
something like that. It's within, so everybody's getting all excited. I was actually visiting there for spring break, and already they've got, flags up and they've got lots of decorations and stuff. So it'll be a big, big celebration. But yeah, if
Mm.
there was a chance you could get there for that, I'm sure you would love it.
Yeah, guy, like I heard like it's such a big thing. I'm super excited for coronation. Like, even though like with Queen Elizabeth, she's been in the reign for like 50 years, like 60
Yeah,
years. So
it's
no one has
crazy.
really seen a coronation in like before she became queen. Like that was the last coronation
Crazy.
that happened in England
Uh-huh.
history.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be the biggest celebration though. I think it's gonna be like everybody gets the day off. I think they're having like a 4-day weekend type thing. It's gonna be
Oh
it's gonna be
wow.
huge. Yeah,
Yeah, if it's a 4-day weekend, everyone's having off, then you know it's gonna be big.
absolutely. Yeah, but it's gonna be so cool. And then I think, we'll see. But I think Prince William and Kate and stuff. That'll also be
Hmm.
cool. I Do you follow along with all of their like news and everything? Are you like
Yeah, like
into
I think today's like their anniversary or something today.
Oh yeah. Oh really?
Yeah, because I
Interesting.
was looking at Instagram early this morning before I jumped on this interview, and I heard like 12 years or something. That I'm
Oh
assuming I didn't
wow.
full post, but I believe
What a
like
day.
that meant their anniversary. I could be wrong. I heard like I think it
Oh
was
my
like
God.
12 years they captioned it. I could
Wow.
be
Oh
wrong.
my
I have to double
gosh.
check. I could be totally wrong and miss
Dang.
something, but I think that's what they said.
Yeah. I just fact checked myself really quick, but it's May 6th is actually coronation. So we're much closer. It's gonna be
Oh,
it's
May
gonna be next
6th?
week. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so
So
close.
it's
Oh my God. I
exciting.
hope it's like I don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. for it. Like if
Oh
it
yeah, you gotta record it or something.
yeah, because like I remember waking up early for Harry and
Oh
Meghan's
the
wedding. I remember I had to wake up early that morning to watch it.
yeah, exactly. Watch the highlights after.
Yeah, or just record it on ABC or something and then watch it after school or whatever it is.
There you go.
I wake up.
There
But
you
like,
go.
why did you choose to go to William and Lee University? Like, what was like something about it like that you wanted to kind of take in? Because I'm definitely looking at colleges right now.
Oh
So I'm
yeah.
like, kind of like was like wondering like why you chose
Uh-huh.
college.
Yeah, it's also funny. So it gets confused a lot with, so there's like a couple schools, but so there's William and Mary and there's Washington Lee. So Washington
Mhm.
Lee is the one that I go to, which is awesome. But it is so it's very interesting. It's in southwestern Virginia. And like I said, I'm from Colorado, so I actually decided to come here because it's a very interesting political school. We have like a great political science program, and it's very, very econ heavy as well. So we have a lot of econ business majors, and since it's in the South, it's a little bit more conservative leaning, and so that was also a as far as just political ideologies and kind of the way that our school is run, the board of trustees, and it's also named after General Robert E. Lee. So that's been kind of a controversy in recent years as far as changing the name and what the name says about the school's values and traditions and things. So for me, it was actually, I really wanted to kind of challenge some of my biases coming from a place that was very liberal and someone who I knew I wanted to study journalism leaving high school. And so this was kind of an opportunity for me to see a different part of the country, see a place that at the time, since I graduated in 2019, and a big moment for me was Donald Trump's election and inauguration and the beginning of his term. And so I think at that time, America was in a very interesting kind of political
Mhm.
moment. And so I think
Yeah.
I wanted to go and see kind of other perspectives and be in a place that I could have conversations with people that didn't necessarily agree with my own personal beliefs and have really good conversations, over the dinner table and things, which since there are so many people who are really passionate about politics here, you can seek out those conversations. And there may be people who have vastly different perspectives than you do, but you can still have kind of calm, educated discussions about it. And I've really, really enjoyed that. So I think kind of this motivation of having conversations that are kind of outside of maybe my realm that I had had in the past, or kind of outside sometimes of my comfort zone, and kind of testing my own biases and my own perspectives. I think that was definitely the purpose of me coming here, and I've definitely been able to find that. I also took advantage of all of their different study abroad opportunities, which has been really cool. They offer a lot of programs and things for students too. I got to spend the whole year, which is awesome, and most people don't get to do that. So it was really, really lots of opportunities, and I think COVID, of course, kind of threw a wrench in all of that, but I think I've still had a great experience here. So yeah, definitely want to check out as you're doing your college search. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's definitely kind of like a gem. And it's awesome.
Yeah, I would definitely take a look at it because like I like am so passionate about politics. Is like a big like kind of like I don't know like how to describe it, like a big passion of mine, I should probably say. And plus,
Yeah.
like I want like major in journalism or even in politics. I know I want to major something in politics or something. So I'll definitely take a look at that college. Is
Yeah,
it journalism,
definitely.
all these things.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit. I will say, it's kind of a controversial place, but I'm very grateful for the opportunities and stuff that and if you are interested in having a lot of different viewpoints and things, it's a great place to have conversations. And yeah, lots of opportunities on the table. So if you're interested in study abroad, if you're interested in politics, even journalism, continuing with all of your work in this realm of things, it's definitely it's there's a lot of opportunities here.
Amazing. I definitely took a look at it. Like I like any
Mhm.
opportunity I get to do journalism or even study abroad, definitely on my list to do in college or even in politics. I definitely take a look at that now. I'm a little crazy that and now I'm looking into it finally. But why should like people like make change in the world with your mission? Like with like your podcast name it says Be the Change, and with that mission of the podcast, I really empathize the podcast as well as what you want to do with a podcast. But like, why should people like make change in like what they believe in?
Yeah, I think that so one of my guests, I would have to go back and look at which episode, but this has really stuck with me. There was some advice that they shared, and it was about how a lot of people have the capabilities of complaining and about of I guess identifying problems in the world and figuring out what's making them upset or what they don't like in their daily lives. And a lot of people have that capability, but the real challenge, I guess, in our world and in our lives is to figure out how you can improve those
Mm,
challenges. And so I think that's kind of the hurdle that a lot of people don't take that extra step to get over. So of course we can all complain and we can all say, "Oh, I don't like this. I don't like the way this is being run." Any number of complaints that you may have in your life, but it takes that extra step to actually try to figure out what you can do about it and how you can solve that for yourself and for others. And so I think that's kind of how I have seen change making. And I think that's kind of the way that, be the change you wish to see in the world. It's identifying those issues and then figuring out how you can actually take action to improve them. And I think the best interviews that I've had and so many people from that I've gotten to speak to through the podcast have really exemplified that it's figuring out a problem, figuring out how to change it, how to solve it, and not only for yourself but also for future generations that may also face that problem.
mm,
And I think so there's kind of three different steps to it, but I think that's definitely been my motivation with all of these conversations and things. I just am so inspired by that mindset that yes, we can all complain and we can all say, oh, I wish this was better, but it's actually figuring out how to address that and improving it. And so many of the problems that we face, we have the capability of kind of chipping away and making a difference. And I think that's what so many of my guests have been doing. But I think that's why I'm kind of motivated to continue this podcast and share those stories. So hopefully people can take that extra step and try to improve those issues that they see in the world.
Like I like what you said because like even though like there might be so many things going on the road at the moment. Like there's so many things you could do to make change in what's going on. Like some people might think like, how am I supposed to make change in this opportunity? Or what's going on? And like the only thing I can recommend is that like just use your voice, post on social media, like tell your friends and family about like what's going on and why you're so passionate, or even start an organization or even a podcast. Like there's so many ways they can do to use your voice, or even just reach out to different activists. Like look, like a big thing on you can find people is maybe LinkedIn or Instagram, social media, whatever it is. Like there's so many people that probably feel the same way as you and want to make change in the world. Even though it might not be the same view as you, because a lot of people, especially in today's world, have different opinions and like kind of like to use it against you when they talk about it. You know, I mean, it's like sometimes you may have to be careful in what you want to talk about because of course it might hurt some people in some ways, but then like as long as you talk about it and be careful what you're saying, that's the only thing you can really do is use your voice and talk about what's going on and what you're passionate about.
I totally agree. And I think everyone, and that's kind of something that I stress on the podcast too, is everyone has a voice and everyone has
Mm-hmm.
the capacity to, share their thoughts and to share. And of course, like you said, you have to be careful with that sometimes. But, if you feel passionately about something, share that. And if you feel like there's a problem that you see, you can make that difference. And everybody has that ability. So it's just kind of tapping into that and inspiring people to use their voices. That's the whole goal of the podcast.
For sure. And like, what are some projects that you're passionate about, or even like organizations or things? Like, what are some things that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely in recent years, and I guess for my whole life, I've been really passionate about education, and so that's kind
Mm,
of manifested itself in a bunch of different ways in my life. And I think journalism is kind of my path through education, and I guess to improving the world through education, because I think journalism is kind of a means of widespread education and sharing information that benefits others, and I guess, amplifying issues in the world so others can also take action. So that's been kind of my path. But I love tutoring. I love being in schools. I think that, especially in America, the education system is facing a lot of challenges right now. And I think it's such an important institution in our country and around the world. And it really, to me, is just the backbone of everything in our world. So both of my parents are public school teachers, and I've just always been very, very passionate about supporting teachers, supporting students, being in schools as much as I can. And so I think for me, that's kind of the biggest cause, or I guess the biggest issue that I'm really passionate about. And I could talk for hours and hours about education
mm,
issues and policy and things. So that's definitely kind of my own personal passion, something that I'm going to continue. I love education reporting and things. So something that I'm definitely going to continue to kind of tap into the future, just because I think it's such an important issue.
you're definitely right. Like, how did like growing up with your teacher, like not with your parents being teachers, like how do you think that has impacted you in like being so passionate about education and all these things?
Yeah. So for me, I always say I kind of grew up in schools. Like I'm sure that everybody had that, kid who their parents were teachers, so they just were hanging out in schools all the time. And my mom was a third grade teacher, and my dad was a high school teacher, so they kind of were there throughout my entire K through 12 education. And for me, I came to develop the life motto, and my parents instilled this in me from a very young age. But to whom much is given, much is expected, and
Mm-hmm.
I had been given so many opportunities by my parents and by their emphasis on education and always being there in my school. And I think then I wanted to use those opportunities. And so I think that has really inspired me to continue to be involved in journalism, in, tutoring, in being in helping other students and, trying to benefit other future generations. And so I think I just have always used education as kind of the means for, giving back in my community. And I just saw my parents, they, work so many hours and they work so hard to be great teachers. And I think that I've always been so inspired by that, just because
Mm-hmm.
being a teacher is kind of a thankless job. And
Yeah.
there's so much appreciation that I have for them and the work that they do. So that's definitely kind of motivated my entire trajectory as far as journalism and as far as being involved in, advocacy and things like that. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's definitely been very foundational for me for
Yeah,
sure.
because, like I feel like a lot of teachers don't get enough credit for like what they
Oh,
do.
for
I
sure,
was
for
like
sure.
honestly, like sometimes some teachers kind of be like a little pain in the butt for some students, but then like you have to think like, oh, like they're spending countless hours each week teaching a class, and that's not easy each day.
Oh
That's
yeah.
never
And
easy.
so yeah,
And
so
I feel
many
like
of
a lot
them
of people
spend.
don't like take it for granted.
Yeah. And so many of them spend, I mean, my parents would work like so many hours, it would be like a 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. type job, and they would just put in so many hours and weekends and, just to be good teachers and to give that gift of education to their students. And so I think, yeah, for me, it's always been something that I think a lot about kind of their work ethic and how they were public servants. And that's just motivated me and all of the different kind of turns of my education career and hopefully into my professional career. And yeah, so definitely a very influencing factor for me.
And like the last thing I have for you is like, what is some advice for upcoming podcasters or someone who wants to use their voice but don't know how?
Yeah, for sure. I think, and this is kind of cliche because I think a lot of people give this advice, but I can't drive it home enough. But if you are interested in getting involved in any of this type of work, reach out to people who have done something like this and reach out to people for advice, for guidance on getting started because you don't have to do it alone. And I think that is a huge thing that, of course, it's nerve wracking to reach out to people who may have, established podcasts and who may have been doing this for years. But what's the harm in asking, right? And I
Yeah.
always say the worst thing they can say is no, right? The
hmm
worst thing they can say is, sorry, I don't have enough time, or I'll get back to you, or something. And that's the worst thing they can say. And
hmm
so it never hurts to just reach out to someone, like you said, LinkedIn, Instagram, email. Like so many people want to help, and especially they want to help young people who are coming up with great ideas and who are ambitious and who are developing projects for the future. So reach out. It never hurts to send an email. And someone like, I would love to help out anyone who's interested in, developing a podcast. I can give you equipment advice, I can give you editing software, so many different things. So I think it always just starts with asking that question and figuring out if
hmm
there's someone you admire, or if there's someone that you're interested in connecting with, do it. There's no harm in
hmm
asking. So I think, yeah, that's definitely the best advice I have. And one that I wish that I would have taken advantage of, because I kind of went at this just very like, I'll just buy a microphone and get started. And I wish I would have had kind of a more solid background of advice and people to ask and
hmm
things. So definitely take advantage of those resources.
Definitely. Like I know like with some people they hate asking questions and like are reaching out to people about things, but then like it's just like it's to learn about that project, like that's the key to learning is that like, it's not too bad ask people that have been doing this for years, like ask for their advice or how they got started. Like, for me, I wish I had kind of like podcasters to reach out to. Like I
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah.
like you should reach out to people or anything before I
Hmm.
started. Like I just started this podcast and just record my first episode without being prepared on what the mission was or anything. Like,
Yeah. And
just
for us,
like
I'm
I
sure.
didn't know how like you're supposed to do that until like maybe a couple months in.
Yeah. And I'm sure, for you too, and I'm sure that you agree with this. It's like now I would love to help people who,
Yeah,
I'm like, please reach out, like
yeah,
I would love, I'm always available. So I'm sure
yeah.
Kylie, I'm sure you'll link my contact details and stuff too. Cause but yeah, and by email, by Instagram, anything, reach out.
Yeah, reach out. Like it's never like reach out to me or Lily or anyone. Because
Uh-huh.
like even if you want to get podcasting or anything, like feel free to reach out. Like I'm always happy. I'm sure for you as well to like help
Hmm.
out with anybody. I'm always willing to answer questions, even though I might not know the answer to that question. Of course, not we always don't know the answer to every question, but then like it's always willing to give like answers that you might think might help to that question they might be interested in.
Exactly. And there's no harm, worst they can say is no, and we certainly won't say no. So
Yeah,
reach out to
we
either
won't
of
say
us.
no. We'll never say no. We'll always be happy to help you, like no matter what.
Absolutely.
We might be busy in some things, but we'll always be happy to help. That's the best thing
Definitely.
about doing it is that we're always
For
happy to
sure.
help and mentor you or have or answer any questions you have.
For sure, for sure. I totally agree.
And like, thank you so much, Lily, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I love chatting with you again. And I'm so honored to talk with you again and be a guest on your podcast. I really appreciate it. We'll definitely do this again soon. Thanks so much, Lily.
Of course, of course. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Bye,
Okay,
Kylie.
bye.